Good morning, students. After a big gap of couple of weeks, we have resumed back with our academics in this week, and I once again welcome you all for this online lecture. And I'll continue with the data structure course for you people with the same timetable, wherein we'll be having lectures 4 times in a week on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. Uh, Before we had a break, we had discussed uh, topics from first 3 units. So today what we will be doing is today we'll be doing certain kind of revision so that it will be a brush up for us for all those things which we have discussed before we had a break, so that we will come in line, and if some candidate has forgotten any of the concepts, then this revision session will help him to recollect those concepts. So what I would advise all students is, you all can open the first page of your notebook, wherever you have taken down your notes, and you can go through that notes simultaneously when I am discussing the revision points, so that it will be easy for you people to recollect whatever I am discussing over here. So in your notebooks at your home, whatever notes you have written, just go back on the first page of that notebook. In the sequence, I'll be doing certain revision session today, so that we will recollect all those points from the first 3 chapters that we have discussed before we went on to the break. Okay, and once that is done, then we will be starting with the new concepts. So we started with the data structure course, basically with the first unit, that is basics of data structure, in which we first tried to understand what do we mean by data structure and what are the different classifications of data structure. These classifications we had done with help of static and dynamic classification, where static can be done with help of array and dynamic with help of linked list. And these data structures can also be classified into uh, linear and non-linear data structures, where linear can have uh, data structures like stack and queue, and non-linear data structure can have types like trees and graph. Then we had revised few concepts of C programming language which are relevant to our course, like array, where array is the collection of homogeneous elements. Then we have seen how to implement a one-dimensional array and two-dimensional array with help of examples like matrix. Then we had revised the concept of function, where function is the set of statements which we write in order to accomplish a particular task. So this function, whenever we write, we can have two types of functions. Either we can have system defined functions or we can have user defined function. In order to have a user defined function, our program may have three, I would say, steps in order to write a user defined function, wherein the first step is to declare a user defined function, then to write a body for the user defined function, and finally call that user defined function. Now this calling can be done in two ways. Either it can be done with help of call by value, or it can be done with help of call by reference. So these two mechanisms we had discussed. Then in function itself, we have seen one important concept of recursion, where recursion is a phenomenon in which a function is calling itself. That function we call it as recursive function, and this phenomenon of function calling itself is called as recursion. This recursion we have studied with help of couple of examples like factorial and Fibonacci series. Okay, so we have seen one example where we calculate fact of n as n into fact of n minus 1, and this recursion will stop when the value of n is 0. So for each recursion program, we also understood that there should be some terminating condition, right? We may have multiple terminating conditions, but at least one terminating condition should be there which is valid in order to break that recursion. Otherwise your program will end up into an infinite recursion. Then we have seen one problem related to recursion, that was Tower of Hanoi. In this problem, we were given with three towers, tower A, tower B, tower C, or we can say that these towers are source, destination, and temporary tower. Initially, on the source tower, we have n number of disks aligned. Okay, initially we have n number of disks aligned, and we have n number of disks aligned, and this n number of disks are to be shifted from source tower to destination tower. Now in order to do this shift, we have certain rules, like we have to always place a smaller disk above a greater disk. So I cannot place a greater disk on a smaller disk, right? And in one move I can shift only one disk, and I can make use of temporary tower to perform these moves. So we have studied these steps for shifting these moves from source to destination in recursion form, where the first step is to shift the n-1 disks from source to temporary, then shift the nth disk from source to destination, and then again recursively shift the n-1 disks from the temporary to the destination tower. So this is how, with help of recursion, we can solve the tower of Hanoi problem, which will take 2 raised to n minus 1 number of steps, or number of moves we can say, to shift the disks. Then we had studied one concept of complexity. Okay, all of you are advised to mute your mic. Okay, please mute your mic, all of you. Then we have discussed the concept of complexity. So complexity is a phenomenon which will be helpful for us in order to judge whether the algorithm written is an effective algorithm or not. Now this judgment can be done with help of two parameters, space complexity and time complexity, where space complexity will be useful for determining the, I can still see some students have kept the mic on. Space complexity and time complexity. So space complexity is used to determine the storage requirement of our program, right? And the time complexity is uh, helpful for us determining how much amount of work is required in order to complete that particular task. This can be done with help of asymptotic notations like big O, omega, and theta. So we have seen meaning of these three notations, that this helps us to determine the upper bound, lower bound, and both the upper and lower bound for that particular task. So we had seen some examples uh, in order to tell that what is the complexity for that particular problem. Now there are some standard complexities in which we write these asymptotic notations. Standard complexities like constant complexity, then linear complexity, logarithmic complexity, then we have quadratic complexity, then cubic complexity, and we have exponential complexity, right? And we can also have some hybrid complexities, which can be a mixture of few of the uh, above mentioned, I can say, complexities, right? So one hybrid we had discussed in the form of n log n, which is a product of linear and logarithmic complexity. So these were the different points that we had discussed from the first unit. Then we had started with our second unit, that was linked list. So linked list is basically a dynamic data structure. Okay. It is a dynamic data structure, and uh, basically linked list is uh, singly in nature, I can say, amongst all the types that we had discussed. And in that list, basically we have collection of nodes, where each node is said to have two parts. One is the data, and second one is pointer to the next node. Now these nodes are created, deleted as per the requirement with help of operations like at start, at end, and at given location. And we can maintain external reference pointer called as start, minimum one external reference pointer called as start, which helps us to determine the first node or the starting node of our linked list. In case of singly linked list, the next link or the last link of our next link of the last node is pointing to null. Initially, when our linked list is empty, that time start itself is pointing to null. Then we had seen different operations for this singly linked list. If I quickly open that in front of you for a quick revision. Okay, so this is singly linked list. So we had create at start, create at end, create at given location, delete at start, delete at end, delete at given location, and traverse. So students, there is a power cut at my end. Okay, I am using a computer with a backup. In case the lecture gets switched off, I will be joining through my mobile phone. So please stay connected. Okay, there is just a power cut at my end right now. I'm continuing with the lecture, but in case if it gets disconnected, just wait for a moment. I'll be joining through the mobile phone. Okay. Am I audible, students?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. So we had seen functions like create at start. So in create at start, we have two cases, like if the linked list is empty or linked list is containing some elements. So if the linked list is empty, then that is the only node that we will have in our linked list. So in these cases, first we use a function called as malloc, which is helpful for us in order to allocate the memory for that particular node. And then we'll scan the data of that particular node in piece data. Then if the linked list is empty, then we make piece next as null and start as p. And if linked list is containing some element, then this new node which we have created, that is p, its next will be pointing to existing start, and then this start node will be defined as the starting node. Then next operation that we have discussed is create at end. In create at end, again we'll have a malloc. We'll scan the data in piece data, and we'll have two cases like linked list is empty or linked list is containing some elements. Now if linked list is empty, the logic will behave same as that of create at start. But if linked list is containing some elements, we need to reach to the last node or the ending node of our linked list. That we can reach with help of this reference of q. So initially this q will be pointing to start, and we'll keep on jumping till we reach to the last node. And we know the property of last node, that q's next is equal to null, right? So we'll keep on jumping till q's next is not equal to null. And the moment this loop will stop, q will be stopping at the last node. Then we can make q's next as p and p's next as null. This is how we do create at end. Then we have seen create at given location. Here we take one more additional input from our user in the form of location, right? So we will be doing first malloc, we'll be scanning the data, and we'll be taking the location as input. Now if our linked list is empty, then the valid location will be only 1. If our linked list is empty, then the valid location will be only 1. Okay, and otherwise the location will be treated as invalid. If your linked list is empty and the location is 1, this will be same as that of create at start when our linked list is empty. So the logic remains same. And if linked list is not empty, if it is containing some elements, then again we write two logics. One is if the location is 1 and if location is 2 or something else. Now if the location is 1 with linked list is containing some elements, again this logic is like create at start with linked list as containing some elements. That is p is next is start and start is p. Okay. So if now linked list is containing some elements and location is 2 or something else, so in that case we use the logic of counter, if you remember, right? So this counter variable we take in the form of I. Initially value of I is 1. Initially q is start. Now this q will be stopping on the node previous to where we have to add. So if I give my location as 3, q has to stop at second node. So the while loop takes the input as I less than location minus 1. And q not equal to null, we are writing this condition in order to determine whether the given location is valid or not. In case if you pass a very large number in the form of location, then your q will keep on jumping, and in that case q will become null. So whenever q will become null, then your location would be treated as invalid in that case, right? So if we keep on jumping and if the q has not become null at the end, we can conclude that the location is valid, and in that case we can write statements that p is next is q's next and q's next is p, wherein now this p will be added at that particular location. Otherwise we will treat it as an invalid location. Now in case wherever we are treating the location as invalid, it is our responsibility that we release the memory of p, because already we have done that malloc above, right? And we have scanned the data also. But due to the fact that location is invalid, now this node should not be part of our linked list. So it should be removed from our memory also. That's why wherever we have location is invalid, in case of create operations, we write free p. One free p we write it here, and second free p we also write in case of linked list is containing 1 elements, where the location was when the linked list is empty and where location was not 1. So in that case also, when the location is treated as invalid, we write free p. Then we had seen the delete operations. First one was delete at start. Now when the linked list is empty, then any kind of delete cannot be performed, right? So we just print a message to our user that delete cannot be performed. And whenever we perform delete operation, we try to now label that particular node which we want to delete. We are labeling that particular node as p, right? So here now p will be start. Then we will redefine the value of start because we are deleting the starting node. So this start can be made as starts next or it can be made as p's next. Then we print the data which we are removing in the form of P's data. And then finally we write free P. Before we write free P, we try to perform all the operations which will be impacted due to that release of P, so that we will be able to utilize the values inside P. And then we will be writing free P at the end. The second operation was delete at end. In delete at end, we had three cases. Linked list is empty, linked list is containing one element, and linked list is containing two or more elements. Now when the linked list is empty, as I stated, delete cannot be performed. If linked list is containing one element, then that node has to be deleted. So we will make that only node as P. Then we will print that node's data. We will make start as null directly, because now if our linked list is becoming empty, then directly we can write start is equal to null. And then we can write free P. But linked list is containing two or more elements. In that case, we find last node as well as second last node. Why we find second last node? Because now this second last node will become our new last node, and its next has to point to null. So we call that node as Q and last node as P. So we find this P and Q with help of this particular while loop, that is P is equal to start. While P's next is not equal to null, Q is equal to P and P is equal to P's next. What happens due to this while loop is Q will be stopping on the second last node and P will be stopping on the last node. So we can write free P and we can make Q's next as null, because now Q will be our new last node, right? So this is how we had done delete at end. And then finally we had delete at location. Again, if the linked list is empty, delete at given location cannot be performed. And if linked list is containing some elements, then we take input as location. If this location is 1, then this will behave like delete at start with linked list containing some elements. Else, we will be writing logic of Q and P. Why we need again Q over here? Because if we are deleting that node P, the earlier node reference we should have in the form of Q, right? So here the jump logic is written in terms of P. So P is equal to start, while I is less than location, P is not equal to null. Q is equal to P, so Q will be stopping on the previous node. P will be stopping on that particular location node. Now if this P is not equal to null, then the location is valid. So the previous node, that is Q, its next should be pointing now to the P's next, because P is going to get deleted, right? So Q is the previous node. So Q's next should be pointing now to the P's next. And then we are printing the deleted node's data in the form of P's data, and we are releasing the node P by writing free P. Otherwise we print that location is invalid. And finally we write the simple logic of traverse. If the start is equal to null, then linked list is empty. And if linked list is not empty, then we simply write the traverse logic in the terms of Q, and we keep on printing Q's data. So this is how we had seen all the operations for the first type of linked list, that was singly linked list. Likewise, we had another two linked lists in our curriculum, that were doubly linked list and circular linked list. What was happening in case of doubly linked list? Doubly linked list node now was comprising of three parts. Doubly linked list node was now comprising of three parts. First is data element, second is pointer to next node, and third one is pointer to the previous node. Now, the next link of the last node is pointing to null. Similarly, the previous link of the first node is pointing to null. Correct? The next link of the last node is pointing to null, and the previous link of the first node is pointing to null in case of doubly linked list. And again, we'll have one external reference pointer minimum in the form of start, which will be helpful for us for pointing to the first node or the starting node of our linked list. Again, we had discussed all the operations of doubly linked list, and we also have seen circular linked list, in which by default the circular linked list is circular singly linked list, in which the next link of the last node will be pointing to the first node. I again repeat, the next link of the last node will be pointing to the first node or the starting node of our linked list in case of circular linked list. And again we'll have all those operations like create and delete at start, at end, and at beginning. You all have done all those programs also before we had done the break. Then we had also discussed few of the problems which could be solved with help of linked list. So we had discussed problems like number of occurrences and searching the element in a given linked list. And we had also seen a problem of merging of two sorted linked list into one sorted linked list, right? And in the practicals also you people have done fantastic work by solving some of the other applied problems. Batch wise problem statements were given and many problems we have seen which could be solved with help of linked list. Okay, so problems like checking whether the linked list is palindrome or not, or problems like whether the given linked list is part of another linked list or not, or reversal of single linked list, or printing the linked list in the reverse form, or problems like uh, deleting the alternate node of the linked list and adding those nodes at the end. So many such problem statements batch wise were given to you people, and you people have solved those problems and uploaded on Moodle also, right? So after this, then we had moved to our third unit, that was stack and queue, right? The third unit was stack and queue. So the first okay, stack and queue. So we started with the stack data structure, which is a linear data structure. Stack is basically a LIFO data structure. Stack is basically a LIFO data structure, which stands for last in, first out. Now in stack, there only one end is operational. In stack, only one end is operational. Another end is always kept as fixed. So the same end is used for adding and deleting the elements from our stack. The operation for adding the element into stack is called as push, whereas the operation for removing the element from the stack is called as pop. So both of these will be done from the same end. Two implementations are there, static with help of array and dynamic with help of linked list. So in static implementation, we take one variable called as stop. Initially this stop is -1, which helps us to determine that stack is empty. So whenever we want to perform push, we increment this stop by 1 and we scan the element at A of top. Second is pop. So in case of pop, we first print that what element we are removing, and then we do top is equal to top -1. Now we have two phenomena called as stack overflow and stack underflow. So stack overflow will happen when the user is trying to perform push operation, but it is found that the stack is full, right? So if the stack is full and user is trying to perform push operation, then it results into stack overflow. Similarly, if the stack is empty and user is trying to perform pop operation, then this phenomenon is called as stack underflow. Then it is called as stack underflow, right? So this we had implemented in respective logics of push and pop. So for overflow, we check it by writing top is equal to n-1. And for underflow, we write the condition by checking top is equal to -1, right? Then we had seen queue data structure. So in queue data structure, uh, we had discussed two operations, NQ and DQ. NQ is adding the element and DQ is removing the element. Now in case of queue data structure, we have FIFO phenomenon, that is first in first out phenomenon. We have first in first out. Here both the ends are operational. Here both the ends are operational. One end we call it as front, another end we call it as rear. Okay, adding the element is done with help of rear end and deleting the elements is done with help of front end. Again two implementations, static with help of array and dynamic with help of linked list. Static with help of array and dynamic with help of linked list. Okay, so in static implementation again we'll have two phenomena, overflow and underflow. So overflow is a phenomenon in which your queue is full and user is trying to perform NQ operation. Similarly, what is queue underflow? Queue is empty and user is trying to perform DQ operation. Then this is queue underflow phenomenon. So in static implementation, initially we keep our front and rear both to -1. We keep them both to -1. In case of NQ, If it is in first NQ, we make front and rear both as 0. Otherwise, henceforth only we do rear is equal to rear plus 1 and we scan the element at A of rear. Correct? In case of DQ, we first print what element we are DQing and then we write front is equal to front plus 1. Now after the DQ, if the Q is becoming empty, we have to make front and rear both as minus 1. This we write by giving the condition if front is greater than rear. You can check that in your notebooks, right? If front is greater than rear, we make front as minus 1 and rear as minus 1. We make front as minus 1 and rear as minus 1. This condition we write in order to reinitialize our Q to minus 1 in case our Q is becoming empty. But here we also understood that there is one drawback. What if I don't delete all the elements, right? In that case, now my front and rear will not be reinitialized to minus 1. And if I keep on performing NQ operation, in that case, I will not be able to utilize the empty spaces that are available on the left hand side of my array. And in order to overcome this drawback, we had seen next type of queue, that was circular queue. So in circular queue, we use a modulus operator in order to simulate a circular operation. So wherever we were doing rear is equal to rear plus 1 in case of NQ and front is equal to front plus 1 in case of DQ, we replace it by rear is equal to rear plus 1 mod 5 in NQ and front is equal to front plus 1 mod 5 in case of DQ, where now 5 is nothing but my size of my Q. Using this mod operator, we make our front and rear references to rotate in a cyclic fashion. Here now the condition for Q overflow is changed and also the condition in the DQ operation where we reinitialize our Q to minus 1, front and rear to minus 1. These two conditions were changed. So we had discussed that with help of a relevant example. What was the condition for both of these? Condition was if front is found equal as rear plus 1 mod size, right? So using this condition, we had written Q overflow for circular Q and also we had used the same condition in the DQ operation for reinitialization of our Q front and Q rear to minus 1 when our circular Q was becoming empty. So this is how we discussed next type of queue, that was circular queue. Then we discussed one more variant of queue, that was priority queue. Okay. So in priority queue, now we will have additional input for each of the elements in the form of priority. Right? Higher the priority, the element will be removed first. Usually the removal in queue is in the form of FIFO, that is whoever has come first will be removed first. But in case of priority queue, the removal operation, or we can say the DQ operation, now will be on the basis of the priority. The element which is having highest priority will be removed first. Now this priority can be represented with help of certain numeric values. The best way to represent this is like a ranking scheme, right? So 1 is highest priority, followed by 2, followed by 3, followed by 4 and so on. Okay, so this ranking scheme can be used in order to align our elements. Okay, now if we directly implement this logic in DQ, it may create some empty gaps in between our queue and it will be difficult for us to maintain our front also. So that we had discussed with help of example. So for that purpose, for implementing this with help of an array, we make sure that while performing NQ only, we place the element in such a way that DQ becomes straightforward. And this placement can be done with help of the priority numbers. The implementation we have kept it aside because I told you that we have to see some sorting technique, right? So once we complete that sorting technique, we are going to come back and discuss the implementation of priority queue. Then we have also seen the dynamic implementation of stack and queue. So for dynamic implementation of stack, for push operation, we use the operation that is create at start, right? And for pop operation, we use delete at start. I again repeat, if I am writing dynamic implementation of stack, how I can simulate push operation? By create at start. By create at start. And how can simulate the pop operation? By delete at start. Correct? Similarly, for dynamic implementation of queue, for dynamic implementation of queue, how I can simulate NQ operation? Correct. It will be create at end. It will be create at end. And what will be the DQ operation? It will be delete at start. It will be delete at start. So this is how we can dynamically implement the stack and queue data structure with help of our linked list operations. With help of our linked list operations, creates and deletes. And traverse will be straightforward. Traverse of linked list simply will be used as traverse of our stack and queue respectively. Then we started with the applications of our data structure, right? So we were discussing application of stack. So we had discussed few applications, like the first application was the reversal of string. Excuse. First application was reversal of string. Then second application that we discussed was function execution. And the third application was polish notations. Amongst which the third application was the most important in our discussion. Now this polish notation is of three types: infix expression, prefix expression, and postfix expression. Or we can say it as infix notation, prefix notation, and postfix notation. So infix is like a plus b, prefix is like plus ab, and postfix is like ab plus. Okay. Then we have seen examples of how we can convert a given infix expression to prefix, and how we can convert given infix expression to postfix expression. Correct? Infix to prefix and infix to postfix we have discussed. We have discussed this with the standard way also, and we have discussed this with help of stack also. We have discussed this with help of standard technique also, and with help of stack also, before we had gone on break. Okay, so these all points we had discussed. This was a short revision, I could say. I wanted to spend today's lecture on revision only, so that all the terms, because there is a big gap of 2 weeks in between, so that all these words and all these terminologies will be revised. Directly if I would have started teaching, then maybe some students would have found it difficult. So I wanted you to come back in that mood, and that's why I had taken this long revision, I would say, uh, by quickly telling you what all things we had discussed, and revising the key points, so it will be easy for you to come into flow now for the subsequent points. So still we have not completed with our third chapter. Little small points are remaining from the applications, which I am going to continue from the next lecture onwards. Okay, and followed by then the fourth unit will start for us. Okay, we just have few points, I would say. It will not take more than one lecture for us to complete the third chapter before we move to the fourth chapter in the in the coming week. Okay. um, Apart from that, we had a regular practice of notes. Okay, uh, I hope till now whatever notes were given to you for writing, I hope you all have uploaded. You have got good amount of time also in between, and I hope that no student has kept any notes blank, because now in the next week I'm going to submit your ISC. Okay, I'm going to take some exams also. Okay, and after that I'm going to submit your ISC 1. So in that there will be a weightage given to those notes also, and if some students have not given those notes, they will be allotted 0 marks. Okay, so please ensure that if someone has not uploaded it, already there was a 2 weeks gap in between, ample amount of time was there for you to cope up with things which were left in between. So by this Saturday, I'll be winding off the notes for first 3 chapters, and no late submissions will be considered after that for any type of request. Okay, and this process of writing notes will continue henceforth also. For today's lecture, we will not have any notes because we have just done revision. But whatever topics I will be teaching you from Wednesday onwards, again there will be a routine notes. Uh, I would say routine notes culture. I'll be creating links for you on weekly basis, and you have to upload the notes on weekly basis. The practical programs which you are supposed to do on Moodle and upload, you have to do regularly. Every Wednesday there will be a practical session in the afternoon for S1 and S2 batch by me, and S3 and S4 batch by Khataukar sir. Whatever problem statements are allotted by me to all the batches, you have to do it, and you have to submit those programs in given time also. Now during this holiday period, I had given you one uh, list of problem statements. So I wanted to open that document. I hope all of you have seen that document. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this one document I had given you on the WhatsApp group. I hope all of you have received. You have received this document?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
So I just want to brief you what this activity is. Okay. Most of you have already started doing it. You have understood it. Some students had doubt on understanding what is to be done. So they had called me, and I have made them understand the structure of this ISC. See, I will not be helping you in solving these problems because this is an exam. So don't ask me, sir, I'm not able to solve this problem, how to do it, because this is an exam. So understanding this problem statement and solving this problem statement is your responsibility. What I'm discussing here now is to make you understand how this exam will be processed. See, here you can see I have allotted problem statements only for S1 and S2 batch. For S3 batch, problem statements will be given by Khataukar sir in this week. If you have not received, you will be receiving the problem statements in this week. Due to holiday, sir has not uploaded it may be. So in this week, you will receive your problem statements. So S1 batch, you can see here group 1. So in group 1, who will be working? These 3 students will be working. Roll number 1, 7 and 13. It is a teamwork. So all of you have been allotted Microsoft Teams accounts. You can also create your own meetings. You can discuss during your free time in the afternoon and evening to solve these problems. A collaborative effort should be seen, because I am going to ask you to submit a report for this, and also you have to present this problem statements at the end of semester. So during your presentation also, a team effort should be seen. So what is group 1? This is group 1. And what is group 9? It is from S2 batch, in which there are only 2 students you can see here. Roll number 20 and roll number 28. Roll number 20 and roll number 28. Are you getting this? Don't treat this as one group. These are 2 different groups. I wanted to clarify this. Okay. You may feel that we 5 students have to work together. No, these 3 students have to work together and these 2 students have to work together. Their problem statements are same, but their presentations will be different. Are you getting this? So these 3 students will be in one group and these 2 students will be in one group. Now what are the problem statements given for these groups? So you can see these problem statements over here. Now there are 2 problem statements given for each group. There are 2 problem statements given. One problem statement is for ISC 1, which you can see here, 1 for ISC 1, and this is problem number 2 for ISC 2. Are you getting this? And this is for each group. 1 for ISC 1 and 2 for ISC 2. Now for ISC 1, you are supposed to solve this problem statement. Your first task should be to solve this problem statement now, ISC 1 problem statement. Are you getting this? Now for this problem statement, you have to write some algorithm and solution. Now this algorithm and solution first you have to write in Word document. And I'll be creating a link on Moodle, and you have to submit only solution of this first problem statement. When I say solution, it is not a program. See students, there is difference between a program and an algorithm. I'm not asking you to upload program. You have to upload the algorithm and solution. You have to upload your understanding about that problem statement. Some examples, maybe. Okay, most of the cases I have given example. Similarly, you can also take another example so that it will help me to understand whether your understanding of that problem statement is correct or not. So maybe like I have given one example over here for this problem statement. You can take another input, another problem statement, and you can solve that also. And then you can write an algorithm for this particular problem. So this will be there in your Word file. This you have to do in your Word file. And this Word file will be common for a group. So these 3 students will prepare one Word file. Similarly, these 2 students will prepare one Word file. Now these Word files will be checked for plagiarism. If you copy this anywhere from internet or anyone from the other groups, then it will be treated as copied. You have to write this in your own words. Very important. This solution and algorithm you have to write in your own words. I am going to pass all these solutions through a plagiarism check software. And if I find that there is a plagiarism, there is a copying from internet, or if there is a copying from any source, any other group, then in that case, that group will be allotted 0 marks for that ISC. So be careful. You have to write the solution in your own words. Are you getting this? So this you have to submit as a part of your ISC 1 doc file. Similarly, ISC 2, whenever I will be telling you afterwards, maybe after 1 month, that time you have to upload solution in the document file for this second problem statement of ISC 2. Are you getting this? This problem statement is for ISC 1 and this problem statement is for ISC 2. Right now you have to submit, whenever I'll create link, you have to submit solution document for only this one, first one. Each one will have different, like this group 2 and group 10 is having this first problem statement. You have to upload this one. And this second is for your next time. Likewise, group number 3 and group number 11 is having save Gautam problem statement for ISC 1. Similarly, next group number 4 and group number 12 is having student scores for your ISC 1. Okay. And at the end of semester, you have to show the program and implementation for both the problem statements as a part of mini project. Now this will be treated for your laboratory course ISC. For your theory course ISC, only soft copy of solution and algorithm is expected. For ISC 1, first problem statement. For ISC 2, second problem statement. And for your laboratory course, the practical implementation, so your actual code and the output window, screenshot of that, and your presentation will be taken at the end of semester for both the problem statement. And that marks will be considered for your laboratory course ISC under mini project. This structure I had announced on the day 1 of lecture also, day 1 of subject, case study and mini project. Is any student still not understood this assessment mechanism? Please ask. Or is it clear what you people have to do? Any candidate is having any doubt of what notice is given to you?
Hello, sir.
Yes, yes.
So, what do you exactly want to say by the solution?
algorithm and solution. See, for example, this rat in a maze problem statement is given over here, right? Now in this problem statement, here one sample input I have given with the output. What will be the input and output for this problem statement? So what students can do is they can take another input, a different input, and they can solve the same problem statement, and they can tell what is the output of that. And then they have to design an algorithm. So you have studied in first year steps to write algorithm. Algorithm, flowchart, first year you have studied, right?
Yes, sir.
So you have to write algorithm, and you may also write flowchart for this problem statement in a document file. This will be steps. This will not be actual program. There is difference between an algorithm and a program, right?
Yes, sir.
So what I want in the ISC 1 of theory course is the algorithm and examples, additional examples. Don't write the same example. You can add that same example also, but I want to see another example. In some cases, I have not given example. So it is okay. You can take directly a example of your choice. Here also I have given one example, input and output. See, here I have given input, output, and example explanation is also given. Similarly, this group can, what can they can do? They can take another example. If the input is, say, some different inputs are there, what will be the output and what will be the explanation for that input and output? That they have to write. Why they have to do this? Because first you should be able to understand that how this problem has to be solved on paper. Then only you can write a code, right? So that I'm expecting in the algorithm and solution in the form of soft copy for the theory ISCs. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So in next week, most probably I'll be creating a link for you people to submit the algorithm and solution for the ISC 1. So in which you are supposed to only upload problem statement number 1, algorithm and solution. Only one problem statement, that is ISC 1 wala problem statement. ISC 2, again I'll give you one more month to solve that. Right now you are supposed to solve only problem statement number 1 allotted to your group. And when I say solve, I'm not expecting the program right now. I want in next week that you understand different input output for that problem statement and write down the steps of how you are going to solve that problem in the form of algorithm. Okay, with this we will conclude for today's lecture as we are running out of time. Okay, so let me download the attendance first.